Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for making time on a Sunday afternoon to talk about this exciting topic. I know in January, whether or not it's cold or your family is pining for the time you spend at winter break or wondering when this pandemic will ever end, looking ahead to the summer can be a hopeful activity. College Matchpoint welcomes you. We have a great team today to talk to you about all things summer planning. Lisa Bain-Carlton, our founder and CEO, Claudia Gonzalez, one of our senior educational consultant and director of community engagement, and Allison Randall, one of our educational consultants, but also our managing director. We're excited to talk to you about this topic that we all feel so excited about. And we're lucky today to have two folks join us, two partners. Mary Dell Harrington, who is the co-founder of Grown and Flown. Most of the parents who are on this webinar may know and spend lots of time on Grown and Flown. It's the preeminent online community and Facebook group for parents of young people, as well as Jed Appleruth. Jed is the founder and president of Appleruth Tutoring Services, one of the most respected tutoring and test prep companies in North America. So, why would you carve out time on this wonderful Sunday afternoon to talk about all things summer planning? Because it's such a great topic in the middle of the school year to look ahead on. Today, we want to talk a little bit about what engagement looks like. Where should you start? The role that parents can play, and how do colleges consider engagement? How do they consider summer activities? A couple of housekeeping details. We will be sharing both the recording of this webinar and the presentation materials that we're going through today in a follow-up email tomorrow afternoon. Also, we will be answering as many of the questions as you have in the chat box. All of you are Zoom veterans, so you know exactly how to pop up the chat box and answer your question. If it's a question so specific to a student or a family, we may not be able to answer it, but instead we'll try to answer everything we possibly can on questions regarding the materials that we're covering today. Now, as a sort of a read the room understatement, we know that summer planning is like everything else in the pandemic, turned upside down and sideways. We do want to start by saying that if you or your family is grappling with the pandemic or any of the long-term effects, our thoughts are with you. And we also want to say for students and parents whose last 2 years of high school experience has been knocked over, we know how difficult it is. Students have had to navigate a very different 20 months, and they continue to do so. I spoke with a student earlier today who said the beginning of every semester is a hope that things will stabilize this semester, and that's difficult and wearing for teenagers. Parents have been forced to wear hats that they never expected to wear, as have teachers and school counselors. As a result, there has been a host of opportunities around virtual, which today we're going to try to talk about a large enough umbrella that we can talk about in-person and virtual. And we know those plans are changing on almost a daily basis. And then finally, as you would imagine, this has occasioned a fairly substantial disruption in parts of the college admissions process.
So to kick us off talking about summer planning, when we at College Matchpoint think about summer planning, we're really thinking about engagement. And what we believe and what we have found working with so many students is that engagement helps students thrive in college and beyond. So engagement is not just about how to get into college. Engagement is about being successful in college. And there's excellent research to back us up here that engagement actually helps students who are engaged are more likely to have better grades, to feel more motivated, and they're 4.5 times more likely to be hopeful about the future. And we definitely have seen this in the last couple of years. The first 2020 summer, trying to hustle to find kids, opportunities, mostly online, was challenging. But what we found is that ability to have engagement, even if it was virtually, was really a lifeline for many of our students and gave them some real satisfaction in that summer. So engagement, we believe, is at the foundation of healthy teen development. Now, at College Matchpoint, we kind of have developed a little thing called I4. It's just our little looking at how to look at activity and engagement. So obviously the student's always at the center. Who are you? What are your skills, your aptitudes? But then most of our students are going to start out by looking at their interests and their involvement. They're going to dabble. They're going to try on some things to see what they like. And what we hope is that as they go through the years, they move towards things that require more initiative and more impact. Initiative and impact means you kind of have to have more in the game, but it's just a little way to look at the types of activity and engagement and to consider kind of where you are on that and what you're looking for when you think about summer planning. Now, Claudia is going to talk a little bit about the myths of summer planning.
Yes, there are so many myths out there on summer planning. It's actually a little bit mind-boggling for me. So for many years, I worked on the other side of the desk, reading and evaluating applications. And I think some of the ones I really want to touch upon on this slide are, one, whether or not the Ivy League programs are going to help you out in that admissions process. And I can just tell you, it does not. So I think if you're going to go to one of the Ivy programs, or you're considering one of those programs for your future, that you really look at the engagement and the enrichment that you can get from the program itself, rather than hoping to get a little bump or a little gold star on your application. I think the other one I think that a lot of families have concern over is whether or not service, volunteering, really getting engaged with a paid job, whether or not that's enough. And the reality is, for a lot of students, those opportunities are really worthwhile. And so I think a lot of colleges and universities in particular are really wanting just to know, how are you using and utilizing your summers in a really positive way? And I think the thing to really remember about colleges and universities is that they're just trying to build a community that's going to work on their own campuses. So you do need students who volunteer, and you need other folks who do other things too.
Now, one of the things that I think is so important when we think about how to plan a good summer, obviously students need to be really engaged in this process, but it's a family decision, family discussion, which we'll talk about. But I think when we're looking through the grades, in the 9th grade, we're really just exploring. So I think it's really working with your student to find something that sounds interesting and exciting, that's maybe they've been interested in, but just kind of jump in, try something. In the 10th grade, we're hoping that sometimes students can aim for programs that might help them test out their hypothesis or their thoughts around major. This can help them because it then gives us something to work with when we get to the junior year. And in the 11th grade, the hope is that a student might step it up a little bit and show some initiative and some impact. Now, having said that, I meet 11th graders all the time who maybe just need to explore. And I meet 11th graders who maybe need to test out a major. And I've met a 9th grader who was ready for a huge impact project. So this is not going to work for every student, but it's a little bit of a guidepost when you think about how activity goes by grade.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the different types of summer opportunities. There is a whole host of summer opportunities. It was fun to see in the chat box before we started a bunch of the opportunities, be it lifeguarding or having a job or working in different settings. You know, so many students already have a portion of their summer scheduled out with a camp that they've gone to. They might be an athlete who spends time in the summer. They might be a band member or a different kind of artist who already spends time in the summer. What we want to try to do is give you a feel for a set of summer opportunities that students and parents oftentimes come to us and ask, how do I navigate this type of program, what it is about? And as Claudia said, the question isn't, what's the magic list of activities? I had a parent one day tell me, I understand this isn't Google Maps. You can't give me a map to Stanford or to University of Virginia or to Harvard. Instead, as Lisa said, I need to start with my student, what are her motivations, her skills, and what will give her a sensational summer. So we want to dive in by sharing with you our directory of over 300 opportunities. Many of you have already seen this. We've been keeping this for the last several years because we know it's so challenging to go out on the web and to find programs. It's organized both by program type, but then within the program types by subject matter. So you can dive in and really get a sense of which opportunities do I want to begin researching with my son or daughter, or as a student, which are the ones that I feel like most will help me level up, most will help me step up into the kind of initiative and impact Lisa mentioned, or as a younger student, really get a sense of experimenting. Is this an area that really interests me?
Great. So now that you have sort of a broad sense of the type of programs that are available, I want us to dive a little bit deeper into a couple of the most popular programs that are out there. And so we organize that by pre-college versus college courses. A great way to think about pre-college is that this is really an opportunity for a student to enrich themselves in terms of a specific topic. Maybe they're working on a project, but that kind of experience really helps students make decisions, perhaps in terms of future careers or in future majors. So it is a really wonderful opportunity. Many times pre-college programs are hosted on a campus, although we continue to see many virtual opportunities for this as well. But I think one of the advantages of a pre-college program is that if it is hosted on a campus, you get to see where this campus is located by region of the country. And so you get to get a sense of like, oh yeah, the Carolinas feel this way, or California is a really groovy place in a different way. So students can really envision whether or not they belong in a particular area or on a particular type of campus. The extra bonus is that students are often meeting with the faculty a little bit more in smaller settings, which is a really nice advantage. The second option here are college courses. So if your student is already challenging themselves in their coursework, and maybe they want an opportunity to try something that may not be offered by their school, for instance, a class in sociology, maybe they want to try more advanced math courses, taking a specific college course from a university or college can be a really great way to deepen their knowledge and have them understand what a college level course is all about. So both of these are really phenomenal opportunities. So here are some examples. So we have NC State, we have a program, the Iowa Young Writers Studio. We also have a program from Colorado State that's focused on business. So you can see that there's a wide variety of programs that are available. Oftentimes what a university will host on their campus is determined by sometimes the strength of the program that is out there. The fact that there are not very many vet camp programs and NC State has one can drive people to explore that campus a little bit deeper. So this is a wonderful opportunity for your students to dive in deeper into those subject matters. But you're not limited to just campus programs. You know, I really love Girls Who Code, so this is really an opportunity for our female students for this one, although there's lots of other programs out there for that are co-ed or for men, but this is a chance for them to work virtually on something on a very specific topic like programming. So I think that these are all wonderful options. As with any of these programs, you got to check the websites for deadlines, that there's cost associated with this. Sometimes our very eager younger students who may just be coming into ninth grade may not be yet eligible for some of these programs, but there are things that are out there for everyone. So for college courses, there's a wide variety of college courses. And I think this is where sometimes families can feel a little bit overwhelmed by the variety. They're wondering often like, geez, is like taking a class from Wake Forest better than taking something from Johns Hopkins or Yale? And I think if you're doing that comparative, that's not really the goal that you're really trying to achieve. You're really trying to see whether or not a student is diving in more deeply into a specific subject matter. And if they're doing this course virtually, if it's meeting the needs that they have specifically, what are their personal goals? If they're trying to explore a campus and do the campus experience and do college courses, absolutely, it's a great way to kind of see what is happening on those campuses and whether or not the feel, look, touch experience is in sort of the same vein that your students may be looking for.
Now, we're lucky today to have Jed Appleruth join us. Jed has done a lot of research, and as he's built his company, has frequently talked with different students and family members about when and how to integrate standardized test prep into a summer. I think there are some items that you want to consider. And in a minute, Jed's going to talk a bit about what that might look like in terms of summer planning. The first question that families often ask is, my student is either a rising junior or a rising senior. Is summer a smart time to integrate test prep into the plan? Lisa, do you want to talk for a couple of seconds about how you've helped students and parents consider the answer to that question?
I think there's a lot of factors, which we could do a whole nother session on test prep, depending on what year your student is, how much math they've completed. You know, we generally want students to have completed Algebra 2, so you probably don't want to start doing a lot of test prep until that point. But if you have, then some students will use summer as a great time to get a jump start and kind of get that piece out of the way so that they can, you know, use their coming years for focusing on college list and other things. So a lot of it is really going to depend on the student academically, their strength. I don't think starting too young is very smart unless the student is really, has really superior academic skills. Otherwise, I think that, you know, most of the research shows they tend to do better, you know, waiting a little bit.
And Lisa, if a student does start test prep in the summer, what should she plan on in terms of how many weeks that might entail and how many hours per week that might entail if they decide it makes the most sense in their busy schedule to do testing and to do test prep during the summer before junior or senior year?
Oh gosh, well, it sort of depends where they are. Let's just say they're starting testing, right? If they're starting testing, then I would say typically students are going to do about two times a week if they're doing one-on-one test prep, which we find to be the most successful for sure. And so they're usually going to meet twice a week, and they're usually going to do that over, you know, a 6 to 8 week period. So many of our students do test prep and other things at the same time. So that shouldn't rule that out in any way.
Great. A couple of other things to consider as it relates to whether or not you want to integrate test prep into your summer, and if so, how. The first question is, if I start in the summer, but I don't plan on taking it until the next spring. Is that too long a window to be prepping for a standardized test? And the answer is typically yes. It oftentimes is very, very difficult to maintain that kind of energy and focus for that long on standardized test prep. And then the second thing is, honestly, given that, what might make the most sense in terms of carving out time for practice tests? Jed, we've talked a little bit about whether or not a student should consider test prep in the summer. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you found that is effective when students decide to do standardized test prep during the summer?
Absolutely. So the different options that are available, students can do a group class over the summertime. Often they're about 8 weeks, 10 weeks long. They can do individual one-on-one preparation for the SAT, ACT, and that you can structure it however you want. I've seen kids do more intensive prep where they do twice a week. They do once a week. I've seen kids even spread it out and do it once every other week. It's very personalized, customized, based on your own path. There's also self-prep, and there are self-prep options where kids can do something and this log in on their own. It's asynchronous. When they have time, they do it. And so there are many different options, different structures for doing the prep over the summertime. And in my experience, a lot of our kids who are the most highly scheduled, the most ambitious students are the ones who are in fact using the summertime to do some preparation over the summertime, because that's their lightest academic time of the year. And they can still have an internship. They can still do some, we have kids going to summer camp, they're counselors, other things, but also they save some time. It could be a couple hours a week to do some of the prep while things are relatively academically light. And so I think for a lot of our kids, especially the ones who may be thinking about that, the national merit prep, that the PSAT happens in October as a junior, and some kids are prepping some for that. Those are our top achievers, but those aren't the only ones. So there are a lot of kids who are going to have a pretty stacked schedule, a lot of APs or IB classes who use that summer time to get in some of this important work.
Thanks so much, Jed. What we're going to ask everybody to do is, if you have questions for Jed related specifically to integrating test prep into summer planning, please feel free to put it in the Q&A box. We'll answer it there, and then if we're unable to answer it, we'll be sharing in the follow-up email tomorrow a great deal of the resources that Jed and his team have pulled together. Thanks so much, Jed.
Anytime.
Great. So jumping right back into other opportunities as we start thinking of engagement, one is the area of research. So a lot of times, people aren't very familiar with research, although we're starting to see more of a trend in which more students are actually engaging with it. So this is basically a very deep dive into a specific subject area or question. So this is where we typically will encourage students to work with a mentor, but there's also lots of programs that actually do facilitated work with high school students to help them through the research projects. So this is typically, I find that students who are very sort of taking a lot of self-directed approach or take a lot of initiative in their own learning do best with research. So Pioneer is a really wonderful example. It has been around what feels like forever. And they're really wonderful because they're completely virtual. You do earn college credit for the work that you do with Pioneer. And so that is actually granted by Oberlin College in Ohio. So this is a wonderful way for students to dive in deeper and get those questions under their belt. In terms of admission, it depends on the school, but overall, most schools are going to see research as something favorable, but there is sort of a wide variety of research that's out there. So some research topics are more challenging than others, and it's really dependent upon what your student wants to pursue.
I would mention, as Claudia said, there are a surprisingly large number of companies that offer this matchmaking service. On our directory of summer opportunities, we list all that we're aware of. And if students are really eager, based on their interest in a topic, to dive deep and do independent research, we encourage you to look at a number of the different companies, because many of them are different in a number of different ways.
And I'm going to put one last thing in there. And don't forget the option. Many of you, or I know some of you are in the Austin area. Many of you have universities in your city. It is also possible to get a mentor at a local college. And we've seen many students do that. So you're going to have to be more self-directed, but just for a no cost option, I want to make sure that you're aware that you don't have to, you can do independent research without one of these programs for sure.
And a comment that I would make on independent research is this is really for when the student is self-directed and eager to dive in. This is not a big turn on the Google Maps of how to have a great summer. This is really when a student says, I loved this topic so much, I'm hungry to go deeper. And they typically are able to start that conversation with a teacher at their own high school. Now, in addition to the university-sponsored or hosted online classes, there are a whole host of asynchronous classes, what several years ago were referred to as MOOCs, that oftentimes give a student the opportunity to develop more skills, and they can be much more affordable than some of the classes that go directly through a college or university. There are two primary marketplaces, if you will, of classes that are provided primarily by higher ed institutions. These companies are both founded or still managed by higher ed institutions. They have a course catalog. These classes can be really, really helpful if a student wants to develop more knowledge in a topic area and they're interested in doing it from a college standpoint. These are also classes that are built from scratch to be delivered online. In addition to that, one of the things that we've noticed over the last several years is students being hungry to develop skills specific to areas that they've already been involved in, where they want to either deepen an existing skill or become aware of how to do some things that they've always been interested in. And summer is a great opportunity for that. We've listed 4 here on the website. We have over 15 different online course providers. These tend to be a little more affordable and a little more specific to a subject area that a student might be interested in. And we saw a number of students we work with even do this over the winter break. So this doesn't simply have to be a summer activity. It can actually be an activity year-round. Now, in terms of internships, one of the things that I think many students tend to do around internships is begin to look at an opportunity to take a major that they may have interest in and working with a neighbor or a family member or friend, really try to get a sense of experiencing that major, that career. Now, this is exceptionally difficult for a high school student to do on their own. A high school student responding to job ads on Indeed or LinkedIn is rarely able to get an internship. So this is a place where parents may want to brainstorm and think about the network of connections that they have, neighbors, friends, family members, who might have a week or 2 in the summer to have a student really get a feel for what that profession means. Now, in addition to that, there are lots of opportunities for students to volunteer, for them to become more involved in community service. And as Claudia said, this is a real difference from the sort of traditional service hours approach. Service hours are fabulous, but this is an opportunity for a student to respond to an immediate ongoing need in their community. And we always encourage families to consider this as an opportunity for the family to be involved, not simply for the student to volunteer. Allison, I know you've seen a lot of students in your work with students and in resumes that students provide for applications really engage and show the kind of community service that they've been involved in. Can you talk a little bit about how you'd encourage students and parents to think about where those opportunities exist?
Absolutely. I think as Claudia and Lisa were talking about the expansion of virtual options for summer programs and other types of engagement, there has been also significant expansion in terms of virtual opportunities for service. On our resource page, which we'll include in the follow-up, there are links to some of those. But I would say in terms of defining what kinds of service might be most compelling, it's really going back to that I4 model of interest. What is the student curious about? What is the student passionate about? What are issues that the student either wants to learn more about or really wants to take some action towards? And that is the best starting point for any kind of engagement, and that includes community service.
Lisa, you've also seen, in terms of your work with students and families, the opportunity for students to develop some skills, particularly around empathy and resilience. Can you maybe talk for a couple of minutes about how you've seen that, particularly during the pandemic?
Well, I think one of the things that community service does for any of us is it takes us outside of ourselves, right? And so when things are difficult, to be able to get outside of yourself and help someone else and see possibly someone who's less fortunate than you, I think that always increases our empathy and also kind of gives us context for our own experience, which is a really important skill for life. Is actually also a really important skill for the college process, because the college process is calling on you to be able to reflect. And without some experiences to kind of to shake that up a little bit, it's a little bit difficult to grow that, if you will. And so I think community service, and I really am so fond of this word common good, because I feel like we have just gotten, as Claudia said earlier, so in this chase for the hours. Stop chasing the hours and think about something that you genuinely care about. You know, that, as Allison said, go back to that I4 model. What is it that you genuinely would like to make better in this world? Also, there's oftentimes I'm seeing with many of my students, when they look at it from the common good side, they're able to see a connection between maybe something that they're also interested in studying. And what is sometimes a great combination is when you can get that piece where it's something that you're interested in potentially academically and common good. That's like a super sweet spot. Now, you don't have to do that, nor do I, but if that happens, which I had a student the other day who's, you know, very interested in the environment, and then was thinking of environmental science, but then was thinking about some volunteer work, and the way it all kind of melds together begins to tell a nice story. But doing common good just because it's something you're interested in and you want to make the world a better place, that is a super important piece of your development and of teenagers' development in the road to college and in the road to becoming healthy, successful human beings.
On our directory of opportunities, we have a whole host of online clearinghouses for either volunteering online or volunteering in person. They run the gamut, and it's really been encouraging over the last several years to have students that we've been lucky enough to work with many of these organizations. Lisa, I know one thing you've noticed over the last several years is students even being beyond these volunteer opportunities and becoming engaged in advocacy. Do you want to talk for a minute or two about what you've seen in terms of that engagement on advocacy?
What I've noticed is students getting involved in issues that are important to them, whether it's the environment, civil rights, and voting rights, anything that students are interested in, that they want to get involved in. And many times as they start to get involved in those things, then volunteer opportunities present themselves. So versus the opposite way of, I'm just going to go hunt for hours on anything, which is really hard to read in a college application, I might add, because it doesn't tell a story. It doesn't hold together well. When a student starts with what they're actually passionate and interested in and gets engaged there, then many times the volunteer opportunities kind of surface on their own.
Great, thanks. Now, we're about to transition from this section to another section. So we want to encourage, if you have questions regarding summer engagement opportunities, be it internships, volunteering, classes, pre-college programs, please feel free to share in the Q&A box, and we'll try as best we can to answer your questions. Now, one of the things we find super helpful when we talk to students is to use case studies, examples, stories that help spur a student's understanding of what does this actually look like and how does this help me thrive in high school and in college. So we have 4 anonymized case studies based on students that we have worked with that we'd like to take you through to sort of illustrate some of the things that we're talking about. Lisa, could you start us with Jenny?
So Jenny was a student of mine, not super excited, honestly, about doing much activity at all. And parents said, great, you're going to get a job. Jenny got a job at the ice cream store, wasn't super excited about that, but did the job, did a good job, I might add. And kept it going sort of through the school year and had actually been a good employee, even though she maybe wasn't as excited about this. At the same time, she was kind of grappling with what she might want to study and was kind of thinking maybe business, but a little bit undecided. And so the manager of the store, who she was sure didn't like her, came to her and said, hey, next summer, would you like to be the person who goes out to all the grocery stores, talks to the managers, and gets the merchandising of ice cream in the store? Well, she was really surprised because, like I said, she didn't even think this person liked her. And she thought, oh, that's going to be really cool. And so all summer, she got to be the person that took this ice cream all around town, had to, find the manager. So Jenny went from a job that her parents just kind of said, okay, if you're not going to do anything else, you're going to get a job, to it turned into something else that actually helped her. Yes, it gave her business experience, but even more than that, it gave her confidence, which she didn't have a lot of. She had to go up to adults and say, hey, I got my ice cream. Where do you want me to put it? Like she had to learn to communicate. So the skills that started with something that seemed like, oh, heck, this is just what we're going to do, turned into something that also gave her a confirmation that, oh, she liked kind of selling her ice cream to the store. So something that started out small became bigger.
Great. Another example of a case study is Elle. Elle, like many students, loved Minecraft, and they actually developed a side business creating modules for their friends. While they were in their computer science classes, they taught themselves 4 different languages. This is one of those things that adults usually look at and just shake their head. Before their junior year, they got really interested in research around mental health and the impact that social media was having on mental health. A topic that it's striking when students reflect on that either from their own personal experience or from seeing friends struggle with it. So they applied and were part of an online research academy along the lines of what Claudia mentioned. And they were able to do research, not frankly because it looked good to a college, but because they really wanted to understand more the role that these powerful tools can play in terms of students' mental health. Another example is a student who was super interested in medicine. Her mother was a doctor, and she knew from a young age that she wanted to be a doctor. She volunteered at a local hospital. Prior to her junior year, she attended a competitive summer medical program on a scholarship. And she connected with students from all over the world and talked with them and realized there are other students my age interested in oncology. I'm not the only one. And through networking she landed a great internship. And when she applied to college, she was able to talk about that progression, that arc, and to be confident that the school she wanted to go to was simply going to accelerate that arc. So the competitive summer program built on her involvement and in some ways catapulted her to initiative and impact.
And our last example is Javi. Javi loved reading. In the 9th grade. He took part in a summer writing workshop at his school that was offered in the community. And he began to write short stories. And when his grandmother passed away, he actually collected and edited short stories about her. So that class actually helped him process something that was really difficult. But what was really cool about Javi was that after he did that, he actually then went on to help teach memoir class writing to middle schoolers. So he went from, gosh, I love reading and writing, to attending this free workshop, to, you know, kind of collecting his own things and then sharing that with other people. And of course, what I love about this is whenever a student learns something and then takes the time to share that learning with someone else, that's such a win. It's a win for the student. It's a win for community. It's an all around win. So, and also, you know, this was a 100% free option. So one of the things that I want you guys to see in these stories is you certainly, you know, there are great programs that you can buy that can be great, but there's also wonderful ways to make great summers without spending anything. Now, of course, summer is focused on students, right? We want students to be, you know, have input in this, but this is really a family decision. And so we are so excited today to have Mary Dell Harrington with us, the co-founder of the Grown and Flown community. And Mary Dell is going to talk with us today a little bit about the ways that parents can help in the process of finding a summer program. Welcome, Mary Dell.
Thank you, Lisa. Hopefully I'm on now for the duration. Anyway, good afternoon. I want to thank Bob and Lisa for inviting me to join you today to their webinar, and really express my gratitude to their entire team for putting together this incredible resource of over 300 different ideas for summer activities. Providing this list to families is such a gift and takes care of really step one for many of us, which is locating programs and learning about productive ways that teens can spend their summer months. So thank you, Bob and Lisa and your team. And thanks to all of you for joining us this afternoon for this webinar. I have two now young adult children, and remember the challenges of summer planning that soared to the top of my to-do list right after winter break. I have a feeling that's where it is for many of you as well. My kids worked as lifeguards. They attended summer camp. They were a camp counselor. They did a lot of sports camps at colleges. They both played a lot of sports in high school. They devoted hours to preseason training for fall sports, family travel. They worked on their essays, their SAT prep and ACT prep. And even though as they got older and older in the high school years, they were able to sort of plan out their own activities, they still needed their dad and me in 4 important ways we're going to talk about. But before I jump into that, I just wanted to mention 2 notes. As Bob started out at the beginning, parenting teens during this pandemic certainly didn't come with any sort of roadmap. And you all deserve tremendous credit for keeping your families healthy and moving forward during these last 2 years. You've been strong for your teens, and they likewise have endured really life-changing experiences. I think we all hope that they'll be able to draw on their experiences during these years when they're faced with the inevitable disappointments and obstacles that we know as adults that life brings our way. I think many social scientists believe that the resilience that they've built up will really serve them well in life. The other thing I want to mention is though I do draw from my personal experiences as a mom, my suggestions come from our Grown and Flown Parents Facebook group, which is more than 200,000 members, and also from the hundreds of experts and authors we've worked with at Grown and Flown. So, by the way, I invite you to join our Facebook group if you're not in it, and sign up for our newsletter. And I think Bob and Lisa will give you instructions for how to do that if you're interested. Now, here are the 4 ways that I think parents really add value to the summer planning. The first is budget. Few teens are privy to the financial pressures that families face, and they'll need direction on whether a paid summer program is really affordable for their families. While some families will find the benefits of these programs to be well worth it and the cost comfortable within their own constraints, others will need their teens to really emphasize summer jobs with the long view of college cost in mind. And if you all have not had the experience of a child going to college yet, I wanted to just bring a few data points to you. Deloitte does an annual survey on back to school shopping, and expenses like dorm supplies and technology for college students average about $1,500 a year, not just for freshman year, but every single year. Those expenses, of course, are on top of room, board, tuition, books, fees. So summer jobs during high school can really go a long way toward paying for both some of these essential expenses. The twin Excel sheets are pretty crucial, but also the extras that they may want to engage in, such as Greek life, which can be pretty pricey. But talking about the pros and cons of paid activities and summer jobs should really be part of a larger conversation about saving for college and what expenses parents expect their kids to pay for during those college years. The second thing is planning. We interviewed Dr. Francis Jensen, who's a brain scientist and author of best-selling book, The Teenage Brain, which we love to recommend whenever we're out speaking to other parents. And she suggests that parents operate as support staff for the prefrontal cortex for their teens. As smart and capable as your high schoolers are, and we're all continually amazed at the things that they're able to do, their ability to do long-range planning is not super well developed, nor will it be until they're in their mid-20s. So parents, as you know, are the keeper of the family calendar, and you're really the only ones who are capable of putting together the complicated puzzle pieces of family life. You understand what the obligations and opportunities are for each child in your family and for yourself. So help them with these planning as they think about what to do after freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year of high school. Plus, as I think Lisa mentioned earlier, some of these deadlines for some of the programs that they might be interested in come as early as February. And deadlines are another thing that it's really helpful if parents are a second set of eyes for. The third thing is curate. Expansive opportunities can sometimes overwhelm teens who may not really know where to begin with such an abundance of choices. There have always been real life opportunities for kids during the summer, but now with the proliferation of virtual options, the choices are really seemingly infinite. No one knows your teens better than you. So this is a great opportunity to sit down and try and brainstorm with them and really strategize and help them maybe narrow those options a little bit. The fourth thing that I want to talk about is how parents really need to be very mindful and deliberate, I think, about how the summer is a time for teens to really recharge. They have packed school schedules with loads of outside activities. And if they've gone virtual for some of the year this year, it even adds more kind of intensity and stress, I think, to their school year. We were fortunate enough at Grown and Flown to have Denise Pope, who's co-founder of Challenge Success, an organization that started at Stanford's Graduate School of Education, write for us. And she talked about ways that teens really need to use the summer to kind of nourish their psyches and their energy levels. So regardless of what activities you and your teen decide on for the summer, here are 4 things that really should be part of the mix, according to Denise. One is reading for pleasure. Urge them to set aside time for reading, whether in whatever genre they want to, whether it's a graphic novel, whether it's magazines, sports articles online, or even past favorites. And she suggests for reluctant readers that you may even want to bring back family reading time, just like when our kids were little. Maybe even go back to the Harry Potter series and take turns reading out loud. The second thing she suggests is to make time to play. Get out on bikes, stare at clouds, listen to music, encourage them to enjoy unstructured time. Further, if any of this unstructured time involves physical activity and or spending time outdoors, there are added bonuses because of the mental and physical health benefits of exercise. Exercise in nature are well documented. We've talked a lot today about serving the community and all the benefits to students that accrue from really engaging in in helping to solve the needs that are in their community. This is one of the best things that students can do, according to Denise Pope, to not only find new areas of interest, but also to foster a sense of purpose, both of which can really help boost mental health. And then I think of all the things that I've talked about today, one of the most important, if not the most important thing, is sleep. Psychologist Lisa D'Amore once shared, if there was a magic pill to give to students that would help them feel better physically, emotionally, and to do better academically, it would be called sleep. So use the summer to try and help your teens set up healthy sleep habits, including healthy use of screen time and when to wind it down. It's something that I think we all struggle with a little bit, is when to put that cell phone away and how many hours to get. But if your teen, goes back to school in the fall with much better sleep acknowledgement and understands how important it is for them, that is a huge plus for your summer.
Thank you, Mary Dale. Thanks so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So to kind of follow up on just a little bit more in terms of what Mary Dale talked about, today we're talking about summer programs and things that your student can be involved in, but it is so important to listen to your student, what they're interested in, but also where they're at. We saw last summer certain students where we were like, they just need to do nothing. So while certainly people are hungry to know what options are out there, and there are fabulous options, and engagement is really important, life is long, and sometimes we need to know when to take a break, because mental and physical health are the most important things. And the other thing that I want to just piggyback on is, we're not talking about things that are going to last forever, like super long things a student could do. They could do an engagement activity for 1 week. So definitely make sure that you're having some time when there's just air in there. There has never been a time where that, I think, is more important. So again, thank you, Mary Dale, for bringing us the parent view. It's just really a delight to have you. Now, finally, we do have a little scorecard for evaluating programs. So if you guys find this helpful, this is just as you're looking at your programs, you may want to look at that little scorecard, may be helpful to you as a family when you're talking about them. Now, of course, what people are always wanting to know is, how are colleges going to look at summer engagement, and how are colleges reviewing that? So Claudia, will you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. First of all, there are many pieces to the admissions review process, and many places practice something called holistic review, which includes all of our activities and the things that students are doing over the summer. But this particular graphic is really diving in deeper. At the center of all this and all activity is academics and the rigor within that academics. You cannot engage in the rest of these pieces unless the academics are in place. So that's first and foremost in any review process. But I do think that as students are diving in deeper, it's to think about how you're wanting to engage with these different activities. Are you intellectually curious, and that's pushing you to engage with maybe research or different types of summer classes? Are you thinking about a piece that we like to call fit to major? Some schools, colleges, and universities will want you to demonstrate that you have some knowledge level of what you're applying into. I think the most guilty people are your engineers and business programs that want to see, how do you know more about these areas, as well as the common good. They definitely want to see how you are contributing back to your community, because part of the college's philosophy, as well as their mission and vision statements, often include a contribution back to their communities. So they really want to make sure they're developing whole human beings and not just people who are going just straight into the working world, so those are things that we encourage. When it comes to evaluating that engagement, I think it's really important to one step back a little and think about this community piece that colleges are trying to cultivate, in the sense that they do want a lot of different types of students. So it's okay if a student doesn't want to do X over Y, or if Y is more important than Z. That's okay for students to have varying interests. But I think you need to think about what is their engagement with this piece of the puzzle. You know, are they interested in it? How are they pushing themselves in terms of intellectual growth? If they're problem solving for the common good, you know, why are they engaged with this specific issue? Why is it important to them? So helping them think through these different areas will help them ultimately in the final processes of evaluation, because colleges care about these things because they need, again, different members in their community, because you learn just as much from your peers as you do from faculty. So we need to develop good human beings. So you need lots of different types of human beings in your community. Okay, so this is the piece where I get probably the most questions, especially with my past experiences on college campuses. And so what I think is important when we think about engagement and we start thinking about highly selective institutions, doing something is great, but if you're really looking at your top tier schools, everyone is doing something. So you're starting to think about how you're going to sort of set yourself apart. And the way you do that is to take your engagement level deeper. Go deeper into your research, go deeper into the impact you're hoping to have in your communities. And the way that translates out into the application is we see students who are performing at high levels, at regional, state, and national levels, at times international levels. If there's a special issue that a student really loves and they're really passionate about, how are they tackling that issue? Are they addressing it in a way that other students and their communities can help with? Are they bringing other people into that process of building and problem solving? And if they are, how is that going to carry on when they are already in college? STEM students in particular. Okay, it's not just about I learned how to code over the summer, although that is important if you're like thinking about computer science, or if you're thinking maybe you want to venture into the world of engineering, but it's how are you building upon those skills to do these other pieces? Are you taking those skills that you're learning to problem solve for an issue? Are you taking these skills you're learning to build something for another competition? So we want to make sure that you are continuing your learning to a very high level. So it's not just about, oh, I'm now in AP Calc and I've done it. It's sort of like, what are you doing with it? It's not that you just learned Python, but what are you doing with the Python piece? And the independent research, as it becomes more popular, the questions that students are asking become more important. So if they have that intellectual engagement, they're thinking about those higher level questions. And many times colleges and universities will actually ask to see sort of a synopsis or an abstract of the work that they've done.
One other comment on this is it's not only highly selective colleges anymore, it's also highly selective majors at schools. Computer science at some schools can be the most competitive of the competitive.
So as we think about what engagement looks like to colleges, we thought we'd share kind of the format for the communication, how students get to share their engagement with colleges. This happens in three major ways in the application process. One is an academic resume. An academic resume, obviously similar to a professional resume, but has more growth opportunities, more skills they are developing, not just results. So there's more process in an academic resume. In addition, every school will utilize some form of a digital application platform. In that application platform, there will be a section about activities and engagement. That is the other place where students get to share, often in very limited character and word count, what they've been up to and how it impacts them, initiative they've taken. In addition, obviously, they can talk about not just their engagement, but reflections on what they've learned, how they've grown in their college essays. So those experiences are also valuable. That's also a valuable way to communicate them. But the other thing to note is that while every school will utilize an activity section of a digital application platform, not every school accepts a resume. And so this activity section is really important for students to kind of utilize and maximize in these applications.
Okay, we've been so grateful for everyone to carve out time this afternoon. This is a first of a series over this spring that College Matchpoint is hosting. At the beginning of February, we'll be hosting a webinar diving deeper into college admissions at highly selective colleges. We know that for many parents of juniors, that college tours is top of mind and so confusing with this pandemic. So at the end of February, we'll be hosting a webinar on making the most of college tours. And for some students and families, that may be virtual college tours. Colleges have responded to the pandemic by really expanding the number of opportunities they provide for students to engage with their school virtually. We also encourage you, if you haven't already, to look at our guides. In the follow-up note tomorrow, we'll include the guide to summer planning, which includes the scorecard that Lisa mentioned, a guide to high school engagement. We'll also include some of the materials that Jed and Mary Dell mentioned. We really want to make sure we're committed to make sure that this isn't stressful or confusing for anyone. We know that we're at the end point, but we also know that there are questions that folks have. We're going to go 5 minutes over, and if you have questions that we haven't been able to answer, please share them in the Q&A box, and we're happy to cover them. If not, thank you so much, and we hope you have a great rest of the day and a great week ahead of you.